I'm Ryan Betson.
I'm Max Cooper.
And this is More The Players, the PopCulturists PlayStation Podcast Extra. And this week we continue down the path of HBO's The Last of Us with episode 3. Max, what's this one called?
A long time.
So, this is likely to be the most controversial episode, I think, at least so far, of this show. And I say that because everyone that had a complaint about Last of Us Part 2 and its woke agenda, they're going to have so much fun with this episode. They're wrong, but they're going to have fun with this episode. So the key part of this episode is the story of Bill and Frank. Now, Frank we never heard about, and we heard about in the game. You have to piece some stuff together. Bill we know about, disheveled, grumpy old prick who has the shanty town of traps. But this... last week and the week before we talked about how there was minor alterations to the narrative compared to the game. Near on everything within this episode did not happen in the game. So I guess before you break into the specifics, what's your thoughts on that, Max? This is the biggest tangent.
It was good. Like Bill is a fairly big character when you come across him in the game. So it's nice for that character to now essentially be fleshed out, because like you said, there is stuff there, but you do have to work for it. You do have to piece it together yourself. This kind of lays it all out, and it's a very very brilliantly done. Yeah. It's really good to see such a prominent character that's quite important to what happens in that particular portion of the game to get some love and really be fleshed out a little bit more.
See, for this episode specifically, what I would argue is this episode is integral to what the show is going, the direction that is going, and what it means. And I also would argue that it's probably one of the best episodes of television I've seen in a very long time. In its ability to tell this incredible story in a short time, but nothing feels left out. Everything feels important, and it demonstrates exactly what I love about good TV and good entertainment and good media. It's character. Like, that's what I love. Like, I don't like, as much as I enjoy explosions and mystery and all those things, but what I love and the shows that I love the most, and what the key thing that binds them all is incredible focus on character. And this episode did it. Nailed it.
Yeah.
So to set things up, the beginning of the episode, it essentially alludes to the idea of like, hey, Joel and Ellie need to get to Bill and Frank's. So from a gameplay perspective, this is the time where you travel from A to B. That's not very fun to watch. So that all happens in the background, and they focus on the story of Bill and Frank. I'll let you run through it because I've already done too much talking.
So obviously we know Bill's portrayed as what they refer to as a prepper, like a doomsday prepper. Yeah. So he's, it shows him shortly after the infection spreads. He's like, fuck it, I'm going to get his, he goes and stocks up on his petrol. He goes to fucking...
so we should specify, so the town that he is in... The town that he's in gets evacuated, right?
Yes. Yeah.
He's hiding in his basement. He's waiting. Everyone pisses off, and he's like, now's my time.
Yeah. Yeah, so he goes out, he gets his petrol. He goes to fucking American Bunnings, gets all his shit. Goes to was it like the power station, turns his fucking gas back on, hooks himself up with electricity, goes and builds all those traps so no one can come near him. And he's just, he's living his best life. He's sitting there in this, like a representative, like a governor's house.
Yeah.
This beautiful white house. He's sitting there eating his fucking meat and 3 veg, and someone falls into his hole.
Pun intended.
And this is where we meet Frank. Yep. Frank's in his hole.
Well, he's in the hole outside his house at the start of this. Yeah, so a trap goes off. He gets announced. Finds this gentleman in one of his traps. Essentially welcomes in, like, with much resistance, welcomes him in his house.
Yeah.
And then
he's constantly, he's hand on his hip at his gun, constantly watching this person. He's obviously You see it throughout the episode. He's very hesitant to let anyone in. Obviously, global pandemic. The shit's gone, all topsy-turvy. One has to look out for themselves. So it was such a big moment for him to, let this stranger into his house. He feeds him, clothes him, showers him, does all that stuff, and essentially becomes a savior and a protector for Frank. And then the story evolves as to how those two, their relationship blooms. They begin to live together. They begin to care for one another, and they help each other through such a dark and they tell it in such a fantastic way.
So we're not going to sit here and tell all the beats of the episode. That's not what we do. If you want that, watch the show. So to add to your point, what I love about this episode is a number of different things, and I'm gonna talk. I'll talk. You jump in whenever you need.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm just probably gonna start talking because I have a lot to say about this episode. I love it in the premise of, well, what does a doomsday prepper do when doomsday happens? Like, that as a concept is really interesting, and that's what we set up at the beginning of the episode. And what we see is the beginnings of someone who thought that they were going to see through the end of times by themselves. And they prepped for that. They planned for that. That was what was expected. But then we learn very quickly that is a shield. Like, that is Bill putting up walls within himself to keep himself protected. Whether it be emotionally, whichever, because we start to learn that there's a history with him that we don't get touched upon, but there's a reason he is who he is. And then we see someone who comes in and disarms him, takes away that wall, shows him love and kindness that clearly he was needing. And one of the things that the Last of Us is always, they talk about it. What is the game? What is the show? And it's not a zombie show. It's not a zombie game. It is, but what it's truly about, it's a story about people, but most importantly, it's a story about love. We see the growing love and affection between a father and a daughter, whether it be through Joel and Sarah, and then Joel and Ellie. We see it in Left Behind with Ellie and Riley. We see it here in the show with Tess and Joel, and we see it in the other connections that we see. That it's the one thing that binds us all it's love. It's the one tangible things that we can't touch that we all need as people. And with this episode, what we see is that essentially it is in a world of utter despair. The horrific shit is happening at every corner. The start of the episode shows Joel and Ellie going, well, here's a fucking mass grave. Not even sick people. They just didn't know what to do with them, so they killed them. So they set up this idea of the world's fucked. But then we get told a story of hope and happiness and love. People coming together even in the grossest of times. And then we start to realize that what it tells us, what's important is not what we have, it's who we have it with. Because they in this world, they have the simplest of things. They don't, there's not much around. It's not end of times. There's no PlayStations. There's no, social media to share the great shit that you allegedly do on the weekend. It was just down to simple living. And because that's the thing. So what Bill had planned, he was planning himself to survive, not to live. So by having Frank come in, showed him how to live again. We see them grow old together. And, when they have the littlest, the tiffs about, let me just make the place pretty. Let me paint the house. Let me mow the lawn. Let's have some love for the things that we love. And then the moment that got me so good, because Nick Offerman is fucking exceptional as Bill. So there's a lovely surprise that Frank has for Bill, where he has been growing strawberries in a particular little area. And, once again, the little things in the 15 or so, X amount of years that this global catastrophe has happened, because what we see with Bill is how he shows his love, how he shows, because he's clearly not it doesn't verbalize it. It's not him. He does it through gifts, through acts, and for him, food is a way that he expresses love and care. So to have Frank come and give him just a small, or what would we consider now a small delicacy, not even a delicacy, we just fucking buy it. But in this time, just the idea of a strawberry is huge. And Nick Offerman lets out that little Ron Swanson giggle, and my heart fucking melts. You know what I mean? It's just seeing pure joy come out of something so little. But as I said, it's just but it's more than just the strawberry. It's what it meant. It's a non-verbal way to Frank to show to Bill that he loves him. And then Bill shows that he loves him in his own way too. And then we sort of see shit go down, and when the Raiders come and what happens after that, and then we get into sort of what is their final hours. Because in the game we know that Bill survives out of Frank. Frank passes, but Bill persists on and then dies later. So it's essentially it's implied that Frank has what I would consider MS, right? And his body starts shutting down, and Frank makes the choice to be like, "This is my last day. I can't, it's not going to get much better. They didn't have a cure for it before all this. Let me go out on my own terms." And what I love about that is that in a world where people could die at the drop of a hat, when you're just seeing utter chaos and death everywhere, to see someone have that choice, that powerful choice, to spend their last day the way they want, with the person that they love, the thing that means the most to them, that is something that doesn't exist in this world. And because once again, it's like, this is my last day, and these are the things that I want to do, and they are more of those simplest things. It's just, take me over to that little shop that we redid. Take me over there. Let's make a lovely dinner together. We'll drink this wine, and then crush up all these meds, put them in a drink. I go to bed, and I sleep for the last time with you. I think this episode's amazing.
Yeah, so the way it's shot also, you can see those discrepancies as well. So when they're outside of Bill and Frank's enclave, it's all dark. It's
the colors a lot muted, yeah.
Yeah, and then as soon as you get inside their compound, it's just like this sunny, bright suburbia.
Contrast goes up, yeah.
It's crazy up until the point of Frank's final day, and then everything becomes muted in that area as well, because they realize that this is obviously such a hard time for Bill, who has spent the last X amount of years with this man who had become his partner, who. You can see that Bill, as a prepper, tried to keep his day-to-day life very routine, very similar to what he had before, and Frank kind of threw a spanner in that whole thing, and he had to readjust and relearn how to do things, and he had the ability to do that because of the relationship that he had with Frank, which was told beautifully in this story. They show there's a point in the episode where Tess and Joel go to visit them.
Yeah.
To try and set up essentially.
They have a dinner date in the fucking apocalypse. They have a dinner date.
Yeah, they're sitting out on the front lawn with their outdoor setting, and Frank's like, "Tess, come, I want to show you something," and Bill's like, "Don't go in the house." And he's sitting there with his gun on the table, with his hand on the trigger. And, they're just Joel and Tess are just there to be like, we have things that you guys don't have. Like, We have doctors, we have medicines, we can trade. Like yes, you guys are self-sufficient, but what if?
Yeah.
And that's, that I think that's how Frank gets his strawberries.
Yeah.
I think it was a trade from
trade
Tess
seeds.
and Joel, and such a beautiful moment. And then, yeah, obviously, Frank makes that choice of, he wakes up, this is it, this is my last day. I don't, it's not getting better. This is how I want it to go down. And then they, Bill does his best to go and do that. Like you said, they go to that boutique. He wears the clothes that Frank wants him to wear. He cooks the meal that he wants, and they share that last meal and that wine together. And it's a very touching moment.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful episode.
It's also one of the longest running episodes so far.
It's exceptional.
It's very, very well done, but it is going to be one of those as we alluded to earlier, it's going to be one of those very divisive episodes because of the content that it portrays.
And I'm just going to put this out now, and this is as controversial. Like, if anyone has an issue with this episode, you're fucking wrong. You are objectively wrong. If you have a problem with this episode because of their use of a same-sex couple, fuck off. Just get fucked. Because this episode isn't about that. It's about people and love. And the story would have worked if it was a same-sex couple. Sorry, a heteronormative, right? But I think it means more in a different way. But the story could still be told either way. But if someone cannot see past that and see what the episode is trying to say, then you're fucking lost. You can go fuck yourself. Because this episode it's beautiful television. It's exceptional television. Like, we don't rate, but if I did, if we rate out of 10, this gets a 12. Fucking loved this episode. But what this as well is not just what this episode does in and of itself, but what it sets up. And what I mean in that is, we've seen that even in this shitty world, there is brightness. So whatever happens post this episode will seem harrowing in comparison. Knowing that these two things can live alongside each other. Oof. You've seen what the best of this world can offer. Get ready to see what the worst of this world can offer. God, this episode's so fucking good. Oh, is there anything that you else have to say?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah, it's so fucking good.
Yeah.
I managed to not cry. I tried really hard. I got there. I was this on the edge. But no, it's on a side note, by the way, because we're like, 3 episodes deep. I've cried every episode of this damn show. It's painful. So good. It's fucking good. But like, we even get a bit more exposition between Joel and Ellie as they sort of build out the world as they talk, and wander on through. They learn a bit more about each other. We see the beginnings of them starting to drop. But this is interesting. This is something that I noticed, but I couldn't articulate. And then someone pointed out for me. Ellie here has a bit more of a focus on violence. Like, she's always wanting a gun. Like, when she sees violence happen around her, she doesn't retract from it in the same way that we saw Sarah in episode 1. We're seeing her not revel in it, but be more intrigued by it, right? So sort of showing that part of her brain, let's just put it simply, part of her brain is more pulled towards that. And I think they've done this intentionally to sort of show that juxtaposition between Sarah and Ellie. Like, that Ellie is the exact opposite of Sarah. So, like, Joel's, like, is his affection for her as a father-daughter, is it misplaced? Is it not? Like, you know, knowing what happens in like part 2 in the game, they said this is all feeding towards that. I feel that this is someone with a what's the word? Not a penchant for violence. It's not the word. What's it? Not a predilection, because that sounds creepy. But there's a excuse me. She has a desire for violence in some capacity. So, you know, knowing what happens in the part 2, like, violence is fucking massive. And if they go down that path, we're going to see her be incredibly violent. So we see that she's someone that will have that. Did you notice that at all?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It is kind of explained to a degree. Because obviously, you know, Sarah grew up as a normal kid, went to a normal school.
Yeah.
Ellie was schooled at a federal school. Yep. You know, they learned how to shoot. They learned how to survive. They learned how to do this. So, there's that background information already ingrained into her, because she's probably, she was born into this world, and Sarah wasn't.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's just she's kind of a creature of a environment at this point in time.
Yes. Yeah. Most definitely.
So,
well, we want to prattle on for too long. Is there anything else you want to add about episode 3?
No, I think that's it. Because the thing I want to talk about is in episode 4.
Oh,
which kind of touches back on to episode 3.
Yes, it does. All right, we'll leave it there. 'Cause we're about to record episode 4, but you won't see it for another week. So
sucks to be you.
Yeah. So we should say a big thank you to the team over at Binge and HBO for providing us the screeners of this show, which are allowing us to see this early and record these episodes. Please let us know what you thought of episode 3. I guarantee I'm gonna get some hate if anyone does watch it and disagrees with me. And I told them all just to get fucked a minute ago. My point still stands. But I'm sure there'll be some beef in the comments. But let us know what you think. If you did happen to enjoy this and you're also a fan of PlayStation, be sure to check out our weekly PlayStation Center podcast called For the Players, the PopCulturists PlayStation Podcast, every Monday morning at 8 a.m. on your podcast services, 9 a.m. on those YouTubes. Talk about all the latest and news, reviews, all that sort of shit through a PlayStation prism. Prism with an M, not an N. Just clarify. But until the next one, I'm Ryan Betson.
I'm Max Cooper.
And let's just hope this show also goes on for a long, long